Welcome to DOS Days, a nostalgic look back at PC gaming from the mid-80s to mid-90s. This is a companion piece series to Player One Memories, which covers the arcade scene during this same period. For this series, I'll be jumping back and looking at all those great DOS era and early CD-ROM titles that I played and loved so much, as well as the times and places I experienced them. So let's jump on back to 1992 and the release of Wolfenstein 3D on DOS, designed by id Software and published by Apogee. But in order to get the full picture, we need to remember at this point, video games in their commercial incarnation were only 20 or so years old, a pretty insignificant amount in the grand scheme of media. Still, most traditional genres of games were established, from RPGs, platformers, shoot-'em-ups, versus games, simulations, and so on. But the FPS, first-person shooter, still simply did not exist. That's not to say games from a first-person view weren't around, because there were plenty in many different genres, but that gut-punching, fast-paced, manic overdose of violence and chaotic action still hadn't really emerged until 1992's release of the seminal classic, Wolfenstein 3D. It was designed and conceived over at id Software right after the company had wrapped up the completion of their Commander Keen action platformer series for DOS. They wanted to head in a new direction, away from the kid-friendly products they had been doing, and make something mature and violent for adults. Because at this point, if you were a gamer from the beginning, you simply weren't a kid anymore. id Software realized this and actively searched out for their next project. Wolf was designed by the duo of John Carmack and John Romero, with Romero, who was a big fan of the original Muse Software's original 1981 classic Castle Wolfenstein on the Apple II, and the sequel 1984's Beyond Castle Wolfenstein, with both of them getting multiple format releases. It was a top-down stealth game with you playing an Allied soldier trying to escape a German castle in World War II. Shooting guards, stealth aspects, and huge mazes. Plus, it used digitized voices, and these were all the elements they were looking for a new game. With Muse Software going defunct in 1985, they managed to track down the rights owners and bought the name for $5,000. But in order to make the game the fast-paced, frantic product they imagined, they ditched the stealth aspects of the original and emphasized action above all else. With John Carmack's engine refined at this point, after experimenting with a few shareware releases, full production on Castle Wolfenstein 3D, which took 6 months to develop, was underway. The game puts you in the roles of BJ Blazkowicz as he tries to escape Castle Wolfenstein, a German prison facility in World War II. The game was straight up action and adrenaline rolled into one, as you moved around the maze-like castle first-person shooter style, with full controls over your movement and direction in real time, picking up weapons, blasting guards, and trying to find the exit to a level, which was always an elevator, and get ranked on how fast you completed the level and how much loot you stole. It was very arcadey in style, and different from most DOS releases of that era. Wolfenstein's ultimate design and creation at that time really came down to the technology finally being at the right stage to make a fully playable FPS possible. The levels themselves were full 3D, with sprites still used for enemies and objects, similar to a Sega Superscalar arcade game. Each set of levels had their own overall mission objectives, with final bosses at the end of each one. Stealing Nazi artifacts boosts your level ranking, and also featured 4 different weapons you could either find with the game's many hidden passageways and rooms, or stolen off guards you murdered with your default combat knife or pistol. You could also get a submachine gun, and the game's most memorable weapon, the chain gun, which shreds enemies in seconds. I played a shareware version of this for the first time at my cousin's house. It absolutely blew my mind. The sound really sold the action, like the original games, with loud, realistic gunshots and dodgy recorded German phrases and screams recorded by the programming team. The game was released for free on Apogee's shareware model, meaning you got the first level or so for free, but had to pay for the rest through their mail order system. It was insanely successful, and at its peak they were selling 4,000 copies of the game on a monthly basis, and over 250,000 copies were sold by 1995. It was a new genre of game, and therefore the thirst for more was rampant. Besides putting out the rest of the episodes, they also spent 2 months designing the Spear of Destiny, a full retail release prequel that was another smash hit for the company. id Software ended up also releasing the complete source code for the game in 1995, which resulted in many games coming out using the engine, including Capstone's Corridor 7 for example. id themselves would never return to Wolfenstein, as the two Johns turned their attention to their new sci-fi epic, Doom, and pretty much left the series behind, although it continued on by other companies in many different forms. Wolfenstein 3D opened the floodgates on the entire FPS genre, bringing violence and its maze-like action to the masses.
Game over.